She does like my science fiction books.
Yeah, that's, but maybe I'll use it.
What did he do?
Good afternoon. Now is your chance to get another cup of coffee, get another cupcake, get settled down for the afternoon. Everybody okay? Yes. Okay, will you join me in prayer? Dear Heavenly Father, we gather today to ask your blessings on us as we begin a new year of reading, learning, growing, and fellowshipping together. We ask that you inspire our reviewers who share their insights with us each month. Open our ears to hear and learn, and our eyes to those around us who might be in need. Shower your love on those that gather here and those that are not with us today. All this we ask in Christ's name. Amen. Well, welcome. Here we are back. It's September, and we're back. It just seems like May was yesterday, doesn't it? Yes. I know some of you had a very busy summer. Some were traveling. Anyway, it's nice to see you back with us today. I know we still have some traveling. There's always fall traveling going on too, isn't there? I hope everybody has noticed the sign up, particularly any newcomers we have, please sign up. And Ellen, our publicity, will get your name, and if you give your email as well, she can include you on the list with information, things you might want to know about the group. The books, for anyone that might not know, are in the library, all the books for this year. I have brought in a few lists. There are more lists out there, but I brought in a few in case someone does not have this season's list of books. It's on this table. I have brought some other WOC items for the other table, for those that may not belong to another circle. If you do, your circle leader will have a directory for you. But for anyone that does not, that would like to have a directory, I have some that are available. Please help yourself before you leave today if you need a directory. There is also a notice of the Ladies' Night Out, which is WOC, and all the information is on there that you might need. Feel free to pick up one of those cards as well. Would like to thank Martha, looking around for Martha, there she is, for the refreshments, which above and beyond, she brings her own refreshments with her.
I travel with cupcakes.
Anyway, it's much appreciated. The flowers on the piano, I'd just like to draw to your attention. You may recognize them if you were in the sanctuary on Sunday. You may recognize that there were two of these up on the altar, and they have been donated by Ellen Fraser. And she has saved one in the cooler this week to share with us today. So we have beautiful flowers with us too today. Thank you, Ellen. Let's see. We are signed up for refreshments through November. We have October and November. Suzanne is going to pass the list here around. She's going to start it around for anybody else that might want to sign up for another month. Starting with December on are available.
Should we get two people?
If you'd like to, we don't care if 3 of you are working on it. It doesn't matter at all. Whatever you're comfortable. We always do have several that a couple people like to work together, and that's just fine. We're very happy. Jane is, and I don't see Jane, no. There she is. I know we do have more, we have 3 Janes here today.
You can see it, Jane.
She is our refreshment lady, and she is here to help make sure everything gets out. So she helps you. If you bring it, she helps you get it on the table and have it ready to serve. So, yeah. Good. Good. I'm glad to see people indulging in the coffee. I'm not the only one that has to have coffee every so often. The donation basket is back on our table as well. and sign in. And let's see, I've talked about WOC. Oh, I will just mention the WOC Fall Luncheon, just to give you a heads up. The cards are not out yet for that. It'll be here in October, but it is gonna be on Monday, November the 4th is the date of that fall luncheon. So I just mentioned that to you so you have an idea when it's gonna be this fall. Then I want to make a comment and show you. This is our book for the May meeting. And of course, we live right in the middle of the hill country, so it is about our own geography all around us. It is a beautiful book. The pictures are absolutely breathtaking. Now, this is for May, and this is the library book. And we only have one of these this year, and so you have till May. Now, the reason I'm bringing it and showing it is, some of you may feel you can't carry this home, check it out, come back with it. I'd like to make a suggestion. It's so worth seeing that spend some time, plan to come into the library, sit down in a chair with it, and spend some time. There's also a lot to read too, but the pictures are absolutely gorgeous.
Could you read the title of it?
Replenishing Our Hills. And it's the photography, and it is out, you get a little idea from what's on the cover. And it's full of pictures. I don't want anyone to miss having seen the book. So I just wanted to bring it to you, show it to you, and make a suggestion. You're welcome to check it out and take it home. No problem with that, like any other library book. I just thought for some of you, it might be easier to spend some time in the library with it. Yes. Gates, would you please stand up? I know a lot of people know Gates, and he is, now, remind me which month we are reviewing you. Here I go. December, okay. And Ellen has brought his book in to show you, which of course is also in the library. I've already read it. It's outstanding.
Fabulous.
Absolutely, read it. But anyway, thanks for being with us today.
Yes.
And we'll look forward to see you any month you can come. We'd love to have you.
That'll be most months.
Good, good, very good. Okay, now back to Martha. I like to call Martha our resident reviewer. We've discussed this before. I have no idea how many years she's been reviewing, how many books she has reviewed. A lot. As long as I've been around, which of course isn't all that long, but it's great to have you back again. Your membership at First Pres goes way back. Her parents were Bob and Betty Collins, also members, as is her husband, Gordon. She has 2 children. Is Helen still living in Chicago?
Well, now she's moved up to Wisconsin.
Oh, okay.
So she's headed north more.
Okay.
She's at UW-Madison.
Okay, and give us an update on Graham.
And then,
Where is Graham?
I know, where in the world is Graham? He's home right now, but he's leaving October 11th to go to Japan. Our son is like in a backpack around the world mode. So we'll see. But anyway, but he's home right now.
Good, good. Well, I always have to check in because I never know what to say about the kids because they're
Yeah.
on the move.
They are on the move.
On the move. Yeah, that's good, that's good. Anyway, Martha has a BA in history from the University of Texas and an MA in English from the College of William and Mary. And she is a teacher of freshman composition at UTSA, and it's going on 30 years now.
Yes. Wow.
Okay, that's it. I'm
Okay,
turning it over
I
to
know,
you, Martha, it's all yours.
She emailed to say, like, do you have an update on your bio? I'm like, no, it is exactly the same as it's been for the last many years. It doesn't change much.
I'm thinking one of these years, she's gonna give me some juicy information.
Well, that is a good challenge, that I will try to do something worthy of updating my bio, and then maybe my next year, you never know. So I'm so happy to be here, and this was and is still outside my comfort zone. I'm like, how many times do I have to say that at the beginning of every review I give, that this is not my normal activity, but I really enjoy it. And I really enjoyed having the opportunity to read a great book. Some of the books we read stay with us, and of the books I reviewed, I often think back on that book, Hamnet, that I loved. I think about that all the time. And I think this Ordinary Grace is going to be one of those books that stays with me. And so I'll talk about that a little bit today. So I always like to start by talking about the author. His name is William Kent Krueger, but he goes by Kent Krueger. I was not really familiar with him before I read this book. He is best known for his mystery series, the Cork O'Connor Mysteries. And the information I looked at, as of 2016, he had written 15 of those. So I'm sure he has written more since 2016. But that, when people know this author, a lot of them know him for that mystery series. He does not have a college degree. Interestingly, he said he was kicked out of Stanford, and he did not elaborate on why he was kicked out of Stanford. And I did not dig any deeper. But after he was kicked out of Stanford, he worked all kinds of jobs requiring physical labor. He worked all over. He was not from Minnesota, which is the setting of most of his books, if not all of those books. But all those jobs in physical labor and the people he met, he said were great preparation for becoming a writer. Some of the characters he wrote about in this book were people he worked with. So for example, Gus, a character in this book, Krueger said, I knew Gus, I worked with Gus. Same thing with Doyle the policeman, who we'll talk about later. He said he started to write mysteries when he moved to Minnesota. He moved to Minnesota for his wife to attend the University of Minnesota Law School. And he said he really needed to put food on the table, and he wanted to do that by writing. And he said, what is it that people read? They read mysteries. And so he became a mystery writer. He said he really liked the structures of writing a mystery, because mysteries, he said, you start with something happens, usually a murder, then there's an investigation, and then answers are found. But he said within that structure, he found freedom to include other elements, and generally that included some kind of spiritual journey. These books, his mystery books, were always set in Minnesota's north country. There was always a presence of Native Americans in those, and a discussion of some of the conflicts, prejudices around that topic. And in those mysteries, he always liked to focus on the Cork O'Connor family. So even though there was the structure of the mystery, he had the freedom to fit in areas that interested him. But then he said he had sort of a midlife crisis. He had always yearned to write like a great American novel. That was not happening. His publisher didn't want that to happen. His publisher wanted him, no, what we want from you are mysteries. But he wanted to write something else. So at one point he wrote this book, which was sort of a one-off from his usual mysteries. And so he found this new freedom. And instead of always writing about North Minnesota, he wrote about South Minnesota. And it was a different type of story. Okay, and my phone is ringing. I put my phone up here so I could see the time. I was not anticipating a call. I will not take it. Okay, but anyway, he said, this book is the best thing I've ever written. And he also said, sometimes as an author, you're given a story, it comes to you, just comes, and it is so compelling that it haunts you until you have written it. For me, that was Ordinary Grace. He said, I put everything I know about storytelling in this book. I promise you won't be disappointed. I thought those were very bold statements coming from an author. I don't know if I've ever heard an author say that, like he will not be disappointed. But I wasn't. It was good. Okay. And here's how he describes the book. In 1961, in a small town in the Minnesota River Valley, there's a mystery, a minister's daughter's death. The book explores how that tragedy affects his faith and family and how it affected the fabric of the whole community. So although he described it as a mystery, I mean, a death happened, and actually several deaths happened, I didn't really view this primarily as a mystery, and obviously it's not his traditional Court of O'Connor mystery series. To me, there's so much more to this book than that. He said how writing this book took him on two journeys. One, to go back in his mind of what it was like to be a 13-year-old boy in the summer. And he said the Drum family, the central family in this book, the Drum family is my family, although his dad was not a minister. And the setting of this book is a reflection of the towns where he grew up, and the characters were drawn from his own experience. And he liked the journey of being able to write a book that would allow him to explore more deeply the spiritual journeys of our lives. He said, I'm writing about the ordinary blessings, ordinary graces we offer each other in our daily lives, like our willingness to forgive and our willingness to embrace the brokenness in one another. And there's a special scene where the title comes from. We can look at that later if you want to. You can remind me if you want. Okay, so life is interesting. A week before I started reading this book, not knowing that the book setting was in Minnesota, I traveled for the first time to Minnesota with my husband and daughter. She's in Wisconsin. My daughter's favorite author growing up, and these are awesome books if you have granddaughters or young people. It's the Betsy Tacy series. Is anyone familiar with these books? Someone gave my daughter this book when she was like 5, and it starts when Betsy was 5, and it works up through when Betsy is married. So it's like a series of 8 books. They are so good. They become really a part of our life, of our family fabric. And so for my daughter's 30th birthday, we were like, let's go and sort of find where the author was from, Maud Hart Lovelace, and where she lived, and where she wrote a fictionalized account of growing up. It turned out it was in Mankato, but in the book it was called Deep Valley. So in that, like 3 days in Minnesota, we drove from Minneapolis through all these small towns, fields, valleys, to get to Mankato. And if you read the book, Mankato is featured in this book. In Mankato, we saw homes that were built in the 1880s. We saw the cemetery, which sounds just like the cemetery that is in this book. We saw small town churches. We saw the Minnesota River and trellises, just as they were described in the book. So as I started to read this book, I totally could perfectly picture the setting. Here's one description that really resonated with me. And this was a little later in the book where Frankie and the brother and Gus drove out to go horseback riding with what we learned was Gus's girlfriend's farm and ranch. Okay, here's from the book. We drove north out of the valley and onto the rolling farmland. We followed back roads that were a mystery to me and that threaded between fields of corn and soybean and cut alongside farmyards and skipped through towns that were there and gone in less than a breath. And finally, we dipped into a valley much smaller than the one carved by the Minnesota River and filled with emerald alfalfa fields outlined by clean white fences. Okay, I saw a scene that looked exactly like that, and I hadn't even read the book yet. And I told my husband, though, like, I'm not going to take that picture because I just don't think it could capture it. But when I read that, it brings it back. So what I did, I brought some photos to show you, just 4, and of what Minnesota looked like. And as you look at these pictures, if you've read the book, to me, they are just so similar to the book. So I'll pass those around if you're interested. And so that was a really neat thing for me to have just been to Minnesota. And honestly, we loved it. It was a great trip. But I don't know if I'll ever go back to Minnesota because, I mean, I feel like done. But anyway, so that was really neat when the book started talking about Mankato. One thing I could not relate to is on the first page of the first chapter of the book, the setting scene. In fact, the first paragraph talks about how hot the boys were in their bed. He said, Frankie said, I tossed about on top of the sheet trying to get comfortable in the heat, and the telephone rang. I'm like, come on, it was not hot. So we were never hot when we were in Minnesota, and we didn't have air conditioning, and we slept inside under blankets. So I'm not so sure about that. But anyway, I just had to point, as I read it, I was like, I don't know about that. So, okay. Now, as I discuss the book a little bit, I don't want to give away spoilers. But, you know, we can talk around some of those things. And if you want to do spoilers, you can, but I'm not going to. Okay. So, this book is a coming of age story. Okay, I didn't really think of it so much as a mystery. I don't know if you all did who read it. I mean, yes, the mystery was in the background of it, but it's a coming of age story. It is a mystery. The first line of the book is, all the dying that summer began with the death of a child. I mean, so you know all the dying, you know there's going to be some more than one death there. And then paragraph 2 said it was a summer in which death and visitation assumed many forms: accident, nature, suicide, murder. So yeah, that is definitely a theme going throughout the book. It is a character piece. It's really, really memorable characters. And that's who I think I'm going to take with me as I think on this book, is the characters. And it's an examination of how different people handle tragedy and brokenness. Every character in the book is damaged or wounded. I saw that. I bet you saw it. The author talked about that as well, and we can talk about that a little bit. Now, I'm interested in how you felt about reading the book. Like, sometimes when I read mystery type things, it makes me nervous, and it makes me a little anxious when I read. I thought this was a very pleasant, relaxed read. It was beautifully written. It flowed so well, but because of the mystery in the background, it didn't make me nervous or uncomfortable. I know I did not like the police, so every time the policeman was in there, I'm like, this is not going to be good. But anyway, okay. So it's very character driven. Do you all who have read it, do you have a favorite character? Yeah.
The Indian.
The Indian, okay, so that was an interesting character, and I have a little passage on him. Warren Redstone. And that, again, is a common feature of Ken Kruger's books. People are really suspicious of him. You know, he's mysterious, lives in the tent, has things, little treasures, in the tent that the boys would go and look through. It's part of that common theme of prejudice that then was sort of flipped over a little bit. He had this wisdom at the end. He is talking to Frankie with his this is just the essence of it. The departed are never far from us. He was a really good character, I thought, too.
Yes, I was particularly grateful to the author that he didn't kill him.
Yes, exactly, because he could have. Yeah. And there was a little bit of a, wrapping up that relationship with Frankie and Warren at the end of the book, which I like a good wrap up, where they had that conversation. Okay, did anyone else have another favorite character? Gus is most people's favorite, according to the author. Okay, I just have a list of things we can talk about with Gus. We meet him as he's throwing up in the minister's car after the minister springs him from jail. So we're not quite sure, who is this Gus going to be? He's kind of like an uncle, but he's not family. The author believes he's the anchor of the story, and I think that is probably true. He has a connection to Nathan from World War II. Both were damaged by the war. They shared some incident that we never learned what happened, that changed Nathan and made him become a minister. And so Gus and Nathan have that bond. He's an alcoholic. He does odd jobs. You know, he would he would dig the holes in the cemetery and really, you know, did that with honor and dignity. He lived in the church basement because Nathan let him do that. He has a dark side, but we see his journey and development. He becomes a mentor to Jake and Frank, and he becomes the man he was always to become. And again, you know, we hear there's an epilogue or whatever at the end, and we hear, you know, what happened to Gus too, and it seems to sort of make sense there. Didn't you notice when the boys had questions or problems, they'd be like, "Where's Gus?" And I would be like, "Go find Gus," you know, because he was a great mentor and help. You know, not perfect, but you know, it's really neat that a 13-year-old and 11-year-old would have someone like that who they could go to and explain things and trust and get some guidance. Okay, anyone else have a
How about Jake?
Jake, okay,
Underestimated, you know.
absolutely. And you know, I watched all these videos from in interviews with the author, and the author describes him as the true hero of the story. He says, you know, Jake was a stutterer who would stand back and just observe it because he was a stutterer. He didn't want to get too involved. He would stand back and observe. He had deep wisdom. And Jake had it more together than others all along, but others dismiss him. And, you know, Jake was like the voice of reason, like, I don't think we should do that. You know, and then the older brother's like, well, we're doing it, you know. Others dismiss him, but he is solid. He sees how people are damaged. He sees what's beautiful in people. And forgiveness is huge on Jake's agenda.
And then he becomes a minister at the end.
And he becomes a minister at the end, yeah.
So,
And so, yeah, that was great. Okay, any other favorites? Let's see, what about Nathan? Who did Nathan remind you of? What fictional character in another book did Nathan remind you of? Anything?
The attorney.
Yes, Atticus Finch.
Thank you.
And you know, when I was reading the book, I thought about like the Atticus Finch type character. And then when I heard an interview with the author, he threw that out there too. He said he's sort of like an Atticus Finch character. Nathan is a hero, and we need heroes. He stays firm in what he believes. In the fishbowl of a small town, some people are scrutinized more than others. Ministers and teachers are right up there. And if you want, and if we have time, and if we don't, you should go back to rereading Nathan's sermon. I have it bookmarked in my book if we want to. But, you know, he was steady. He had a lot to deal with. You know, he was his wife, his kids, the churches, like he would do 3 churches on a Sunday, you know, and tragedy. So, you know, but he was sort of quiet, firm, and steady throughout the book. What about Ruth? Did y'all like Ruth, the mom? So Ruth was modeled after the author's mother. She did not see herself as a minister's wife. She saw herself as an artiste, and she had that beautiful voice, which when she sang in church, Frank, the son, said, you know, gosh, that voice, that was angelic, and, you know, anyway. But music was what she was about, her voice. She was not a good homemaker and not a good cook. She smoked and drank in public. Remember, someone was like, hey, Nathan, you know, we've got to talk about your wife. You know, she's like smoking and drinking in public. And he was like, yeah, you know, what can I do about that? Okay. But there's more to her than this. One thing that did make me a tad bit nervous on page 220 when I was reading this, and I remember reading this, it was late at night, and so, we're like 2/3 of the way through the book, and she's talking to Frank, and she brings up the Old Testament. And I'm like, oh my, what is she gonna do? So she just said, my mother finally looked where I stood. So the dad left the room. And so when he left the room, my mother finally looked where I stood by the screen door. She raised an eyebrow and said, "Do you know your Old Testament, Frankie?" And I'm like, "Oh, not the Old Testament." So anyway, but luckily, I was like, what is she gonna do? But anyway, that was a little foreshadowing that never amounted to anything, so that was good. Anyway, but there's more to her than that, and that made me like the grandfather and Liz, who would come to help out and make food and feed the family, and they sort of all pitched in together. And I don't know, do y'all have any other comments about Ruth? You could really see her growth. You could see her brokenness. You could see her growth, and that was really touching to me. And she was, a wonderful mother, heartbroken. And Frankie, I think, near the end said, like, my mother smiled again, but it was never the same as it was before. Okay, let's see, who else do we have that we haven't talked about? Frank, we hear two voices for Frank. The man in the 50s, looking back, and we hear the voice of a 13-year-old boy. And Frank is really thrown off balance by the events of the summer. He's riddled with guilt. He's, working to find a moral center. And that's, I think, where Jake comes in, that Jake is such a help for his brother eventually. He sits in the car with his father, who tells him that Aeschylus quote, which we'll read in a minute. Okay, let's see who else we're forgetting. Okay, least favorite? Doyle was my least favorite.
Oh, yeah, easily.
Yeah, okay, good. Every time he came on the scene, I was like, oh, I don't know. Okay, sometimes he did the right thing. Like he let Gus out.
It was a good move by the author, I think, to keep him as a non-redeemed person,
Yeah,
all the way through. Where everybody else showed some growth or development, Doyle didn't.
right. But Doyle was not all bad.
No.
But he was,
He was warped.
he was warped. That's a great way of putting it. And really, I'm not going to give it away, but like at a July 4th parade, he showed some animal cruelty. And what I always read is like, when a person is cruel to an animal, that is a huge red flag. Someone's cruel to animals. Okay, and so the grandparents were minor characters, but I really saw them step in as family when needed. And I think Nathan always resented them a little bit because his wife's father had money and would provide a car and could step in and help, and I think that made him uncomfortable. But when the family needed them, they were there. Okay, anyone else you want to talk about? Emil, who was once engaged to Ruth, who then, the daughter, I can't believe I didn't even write the daughter's name down, who she was working for. What was the daughter's name? Say it again. Ariel. Thank you. How could I forget? But anyway, after I was going through all the characters, Ariel was always like, she was a good sister, but she was so older than her brothers, and she was off, like getting ready to go to college, and she was working for Emil, and what a loss they felt with her. Okay, so seriously, really character driven, and I thought the characters were really interesting, and you could see their growth or not growth, as the case may be. Okay, so I have a few other little passages I want to focus on. This just shows the journey. At one point, Frankie was sitting with with Liz, who was married to his grandfather. And Liz said, "This will pass, boys, I promise. But I just come from the city of the dead where everything that was lost forever. And although I replied, 'Yes, ma'am,' I didn't believe her at all." So you see the despair there. You see little bits of ordinary grace throughout the book. Do you remember when Frankie and the dad went to the Clemens house, And it was in, like it was sort of dilapidated a little bit. The dad, there might have been some abuse there, we weren't sure. And then later, after the funeral, Peter Clement approached Frank and said, my dad's teaching me about motors and stuff. He's showing me how to take them apart and put them back together, how to figure out what's wrong if they don't work. It's fun if you ever want to come over and goof around with me. And he said, at that point, earlier when he went to the Clement house, Frankie said he sort of looked down on them. And he thought they were in sort of sad shape. And he said probably Peter at that point looked at his family and thought that family is sort of in sad shape. And I thought that was a neat part of the story there. Okay, and this ordinary grace, it's a tiny bit of a spoiler, but I just feel we have to address it a little bit, where, so at a gathering, the food was served and someone said, okay, Nathan, could you say the blessing? Because that, as the minister, that was always his role. And what did his wife say? Do you remember? She was like, for God's sake, can't you just do can't you just say an ordinary grace? And people were like, didn't know what was going to happen next. And then Jake stood up to say the blessing, and reading that part where the brother's like, oh no. If you reread that part, the brother's like, oh no, this cannot happen. Like he was so worried for his brother standing up as the stutterer to give the blessing, and he was like, stop this now, God, this is not going to be good. But it was a wonderful blessing with no stuttering. And after Jake stopped stuttering, here's a quote from the book. I just wasn't afraid. Jake said, I just wasn't afraid anymore. I mean, nobody else would ever think of it like a miracle, but for me, it felt that way. And that's what I'm saying, Frank. If we put everything in God's hands, maybe any of us have to be afraid anymore. And later, after Ariel's funeral, my mother took Jake to only one more session of speech therapy. He told me afterward that they questioned him mercilessly about the inexplicable disappearance of his impediment. When he insisted that it was the result of a miracle, they looked at him as if he said he kissed a frog and been granted 3 wishes. Then my mother calmly told them it was the absolute truth, a miracle by the grace of God, and they had no reply. And I just love that for so many reasons, and that you can see the mother coming around there. And on page 271, another ordinary grace. After all returned home after the funeral, I like the idea that we'd been saved as a family by the miracle of that ordinary grace. I knew that the flawless grace delivered from my stuttering brother's lips had been a gift of the divine, and I took it as a sign that somehow the drums would survive. Oh my gosh, it's so good. Okay, and then I have a really important quotation went throughout this, and it's the poet Aeschylus. He who learns must suffer. I've read this again and again to myself in the past week, slowly trying to really get it. He who learns must suffer, and even in our sleep, pain which cannot forget falls drop by drop upon the heart, until in our own despair, against our will, comes wisdom through the awful grace of God. And he had to explain to the son, awful doesn't mean bad. It means, awesome, inexplainable, overwhelming. So, I mean, really, I tagged a lot of pages that we could read, but it's a great story. And then interspersed with these really, I think, inspirational passages and events told beautifully. I think it was really good. And 2 things that I thought of when reading this, it's all about grace, it's all about forgiveness. One thing is, raise your hand if you've seen the musical Hamilton. Okay, so this really reminded me of the one song in Hamilton that is so beautiful, and it's called It's Quiet Uptown, after Alexander Hamilton feels responsible for his son's death, and his wife Eliza sort of hardened towards Alexander Hamilton. But so part of the lyrics that are so beautiful and remind me of this book is, and I will not sing it, but I could, just kidding. The moments when you're in so deep and it feels easier to just swim down, you learn to live with the unimaginable. And then another stanza, there are moments that the words don't reach. There is a grace too powerful to name. We push away what we can never understand and push away the unimaginable. They're standing in the garden, Alexander by Eliza's side. She takes his hand. It's quiet uptown, and then it says forgiveness. Can you imagine? You know, that kind of forgiveness that can seep in and, you know, overcome the darkness and the, you know, sad, scary part. And then the other thing on my bedside table, so my mother-in-law sent me this book by Savannah Guthrie, and it's Mostly What God Does, Reflections on Seeking and Finding His Love Everywhere. And I have to say, when I first got it, I'm like, I'm not so sure. You know, what kind of wisdom does Savannah Guthrie have? I don't know. But anyway, it's a really good book. And she had a little section on grace that I had already tagged as I was reading it like a few months ago. And this reminded, it all connects, this reminded me of it. And she was talking about the parable that recounts a wealthy father who had 2 sons. One worked at home diligently, meeting all his obligations, doing everything right. The other defied his father, left home, squandered his inheritance in scandalous living, found himself destitute, literally sleeping with pigs. Desperate, he resolved to return home to his father and beg for forgiveness, asking for no more than to be treated as one of his hired hands. Precious son, that was a status he knew no longer deserved. Ashamed and chastened, he set off for home. While he was still a way off, that is italicized, while he was still a way off, God does not wait for perfection before he forgives us. He does not require a changed life before he shows us mercy. His mercy precedes us. He forgives us while we are still a long way off. He meets us more than halfway. All he asks is that we come. Anyway, okay, so those are my thoughts on the book. Do y'all have any questions or other thoughts, other parts that you love especially? Okay, yes.
Excellent. I actually like the sentence, the one you read that was the awful grace of God. The sentence before it, I took a snap of it because you already read it. I was going to bring it up, but my father used to quote the Greek playwright Aeschylus, "He who learns must suffer."
Exactly.
I love that. And then this is about the terrible price of wisdom, the awful grace of God. That's so moving.
It is. I've got goosebumps. Totally.
That great sermon, by the way, is on page 71.
Page 71. Yeah. I didn't want to get too deep in stuff because I want y'all to read it if you haven't read it. And so that's on 71. And there's another one the week before the funeral too. The father, remember? Yeah, so good. Okay, I don't want to give anything away, but one thing I liked about the structure of the book is there were these like mysteries, and you think it's solved, but it isn't, you know, and so, you know, you think it's sort of wrapped up, although you might feel uneasy about it, and then you keep reading, and then you really hear, yeah.
After the first 2 deaths, did you have the same feeling I did, waiting to see who's next? There was great tension there.
Yeah.
Who's gonna die next?
Right. Well, maybe that's why I was scared when the mother started talking about Old Testament, because I was afraid she was going to do something that she would regret. And yeah, because you're uneasy, like what's going to happen next. Yes. What else? Yeah.
Well, I haven't read the book, but I was wondering, well, when are you going to get to explain ordinary grace, you know, which is a loaded, and you got to that. But in the process, I just thought of it 2 meanings, but I hadn't thought of ordinary grace referring to table grace and returning to be exceptional with this stuttering person being somewhat
That
awkward.
it wasn't just an ordinary grace.
But I just want to give you a quick medley of ordinary graces, you know. I won't mention the one that I grew up with my mother, but it was kind of an Episcopal grace that starts off, bless this food to our use and us to thy service. It's just a quick-
Yes.
But then her father was one of those born in the 19th century embarrassed of, you know, religious things, you know, and his when he was called on to say grace, it was supposed to end with pardon our sins for Christ's sake, amen. But he said it so fast, you know, to get it over with, it sounded like participle Christ's sake, amen. You know, what is participle Christ's sake? That was that ordinary grace. But then the other one, that I'm really disappointed when I don't get to hear it, and not being raised a Presbyterian all my life, and not being, you know, being sort of started off in early years prejudice against Catholics. I became really addicted to the Blue Bloods program with the Reagan family, and they have a session around the table where they say the Catholic grace, which I have come to like very much. And I haven't got to where I cross myself after the. What's different about it? It starts off with bless us, O Lord, and these thy gifts which we are about to receive from thy bounty through Christ our Lord. Amen. And then they all cross themselves. Well, for 40 some odd years, I've been a member of a poker group that are mostly Catholic families, the Amen family with a number of daughters and sons. And one of the sons is an agnostic. And we were at his house one evening, and he called, he doesn't, he's just jettisoned all the Catholic stuff, but the other members of the family turned out to be, including a widow of one of our other members who was a Polish Catholic and married an Episcopalian, and she was sitting there and with a Catholic background that I'd forgotten about. So he called on me to say the blessing, and so I did this Reagan family Catholic blessing. Oh, they all just pitched in and started saying that.
That's so
I
neat.
was just stunned, that ordinary grace.
Yes,
Really, it connected with them,
that's right. And I was reflecting on that title. He said he wanted to originally title the book Awful Grace, and he was like, really, that's not a great title. So he switched it to Ordinary Grace. And when you look back on the book, there are lots of instances of little daily grace throughout the book. And I just used that one example of the young boy who's like, hey, you could come over and my dad could teach you how to do this too. And it's sort of fun. And, that to me is an ordinary grace. And the book had those. But, that's true. Probably when the Ruth said, she said, oh, for God's sake, can't you just say an ordinary grace for once? Maybe she was like, can't we just say, for these and all thy blessings, I wonder if that's what she meant by that. Like, let's not make it so,
Well, what does the word grace mean? When you look in the dictionary, you don't get anything about blessings.
right. And that's why when I looked like at Savannah Guthrie, I looked at other things. Grace, a lot of time, and the author talks about, is forgiveness, is God's grace for us,
Exactly.
is his forgiveness that we don't earn.
And we have someone named Grace right there.
I love it. I love it. And I have a screenshot that, I probably will not be able to find really, but I look back on it regularly, and it's like, grace doesn't seem fair until you're the one who needs it. And
And the word mercy, see, we was
Yeah.
change mercy and grace.
exactly.
God's mercy, God's grace.
Forgiveness.
And being graceful.
Yes.
You
Yeah.
know, there are so many, and showing grace.
And grace to me is so extraordinary, so you don't always think of it as ordinary grace.
I think of it as kind of like a second chance or a
Yeah.
leeway.
Yeah, absolutely.
Leeway to do something.
Well, we are forgiven, to carry on with that, but we are all forgiven, and we are in His grace every moment.
That's right. Mary Leslie?
This is a
did it bother you that as a reader, you knew who did it?
I didn't know who did it.
Before.
No. No, I did not know who did it.
You did not?
I did not know who did it.
I kept thinking, Ruth, you
Yeah.
knew the guy, surely you would have.
Yeah, no, I didn't get any of that. I did not think it was the boyfriend, but we don't want to spoil anything.
Yeah.
But I did not know who did it. I know, I'm never that. I mean, seriously,
I figured
yeah.
it out. So I kept thinking, all right, I know it. And why not these other adults?
Yeah,
Know who did it as opposed to waiting for a 13 and a.
yeah, 11-year-old, or, yeah.
11-year-old boy to figure it out. That didn't quite make sense.
I never know who did
And
it.
the other thing is, I kept waiting for, he sort of kills off the women. I kept waiting for a stronger female character somewhere,
I didn't like
some
her.
way.
That's true.
You know,
I mean, I looked at Ruth, I mean, she wasn't strong in that she didn't,
I mean, she's obviously very talented. And
no,
so is Ariel, obviously very talented, but so flawed. I mean, addicted to cigarettes, chain smoker, and
yeah,
yeah,
and
we're
just sort of watching things happen.
the mother.
Lack of discipline in the family.
And the father was so disciplined.
And the father was so disciplined, had so many wonderful qualities of forgiveness and I mean, several strong, and I never found that in
No,
female
it wasn't.
characters in a single one.
Yeah, you're right, but I think what I was so interested in Ruth is to see how she evolved, and how, like, she was angry at everyone, and that how, and I didn't think she was gonna change, but, how her heart was softened, and she changed. And how she identified that it was a miracle, and she told them at speech therapy, what happened was a miracle,
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe it's the time in 1961, although, I don't know,
Different time period.
different time
Different
perhaps.
time period, women were.
And he said his mother was like Ruth, so he wrote Ruth to be like his mother. Very interesting. Anything else? So I encourage you all to read it if you haven't read it. It's really, I think, really well written. I enjoy reading it. Thank you. Okay, take cupcakes home. Take cupcakes home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. One more very successful review. I loved hearing, and I think it's amazing to me how you handled it as well as you did, and not really telling anything about the story.
Yeah.
The storyline is,
Yeah,
just very skeleton.
yeah.
You did an excellent job. Nobody has any excuse not to read it. Thank you so much for coming today. Do not forget, pick up, if you need a reading list, if you need something on this table, be sure and do that before you leave. Sign up for refreshments if you can, and come back next month. I will not be here. I'm playing hooky next month, and Shelley and Ellen will be conducting the meeting and going from there. And it's Marshland, as I'm sure many of you probably already read it. If not, look for the book out on the windowsill. And I'll look forward to seeing you later this fall. Thank you very much for coming. Thanks again.
Feel free to take cupcakes.
She's offering you a cupcake to take home if you'd like to. So.
Always. Sit up there. I did Minnesota pictures. Here we go.
You'll see one very Grace will take it home so I can read it.
Yes, of course, it's not good. It's for someone else. So that we will be all safe.
If you stay a minute, you can have a flower. You want to stay a minute? Yep. Like a couple of things. Thank you so much. And real happy. Got it? Yep. Thank you so much. See ya. Thank you so much. Thank you. You're all right. Did you take time? You want to take some, Jan? I'm gonna take Exactly. Yes. Yeah. I can't take them all. Yeah. They actually have flowers signed up for the only I might have been here, but I do this every year. So you're gonna take some with That's it, take some flowers with your You sure you don't want some more? You got plenty? Okay, all right. I'll get it, don't worry, they're all in the party. Bye-bye, God bless you, folks.
I'm sure it's.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Enjoyed it.
Exactly. It's worth coming in and. Yeah, yeah. I can see doing that. Yeah. And it's got a map in there. Oh, here's San Antonio right there. Yeah. So I mean, this is. It is kind of, how did you get a hold of that? I don't know. Very good. Because it was actually every year. It was, I mean, it's like, she was.
I see it.
I said, take it, grab it.
Yeah. Well, so be it. Yeah, that part is
And
fine.
it is, you know, it's us.
Heard a lot about it.
Well, great day.
Yeah, yeah.
You do a wonderful.
See you right now. Sorry to interrupt.
Oh, that's okay. How was
Bye-bye, Larry, coming in, okay?
I go to kitchen.
There's something going on here every day.
I come to home, you say you too, I love it. Yes. So, will you probably ignore? Wouldn't do it. Yeah, well, I've seen your
Stand with you. That's it.
I don't want to.
And there's something going on every single month.
Yeah. Maybe not in my class, I want
It's a blood pressure. It's so helpful. Oh, my Larry, I think you can go to the kitchen or do something.
This book.
I'll take that.
Yeah. Putting it in like where you got it.
You know, I always see your letters in Garden and Gun magazine. I've seen it twice.
I'm gonna not take this one.
I know you have to try.
No.
Bye-bye, see you later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hi, want to take some?
Yeah.
That's all you want? Put that right in the minutes. Exactly. I'm gonna take what I don't have to write to the cemetery. I'll check it over.
Okay, good to see you.
Okay, put these together for you all.
Gorgeous.
You only want one? Okay, thank you.
I took a computer of it. It's so good.
They're just gorgeous, aren't they? I have a standing order. Yellow,
You're forgetting.
Oh, my God.
You're forgetting.
Thank you, they are Snapdragon. Yeah. Aren't they beautiful?
Yeah.
They're so gorgeous. You need to get one of these.
So that would be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
I'm
Yeah, I
taking,
love those.
I'm taking a rest.
Oh, pretty. Thank you.
Oh, I'm doing flowers.
Okay, I'm gonna-
Stay, because I knew I wouldn't see you till I
Okay.
don't come till 6:30.
I pictured you coming to me. I love 3 days. Oh, now, in the end.
That'd be perfect. Let's do it.
You just tell me that. Yeah.
It's Saturday, Tuesday.
Well, no, Sunday, so it's 25th.
And how long will you be there?
Yeah.
3 to 5
Well,
months.
I think so, let me look. Love you.
It has been a trip. Somebody's purse, I'm forgetting.
I'm just going to run again.
Yeah, no.
So he was so.
I gotta find a
Yes, I know,
time.
well, he hasn't, he'll start training again in November, and he said his last half marathon.
Aren't they gorgeous?
Yes, like he's sort of sick, but
Absolutely.
he'll try to get it back together.
They're so pretty.
When were you?
They're so pretty.
I think those are double 2 more years.
Aren't they gorgeous?
Yes.
She isn't
They
going.
are so pretty. I'm gonna run out of sleeves here in a minute. But this'll get you going, Willie. That's good. Thank you. One more hand is perfect.
Yeah.
You want any more? Let me get one more for you.
While your daughter's on the course.
That is so pretty.
Yes, Robert.
Okay, there you go.
Thank you.
Love
Thank
you. Love you. Mwah. Mwah. Love you.
Wonderful.
We're getting it all together.
I took a
Exactly.
big picture.
No mercy. Yeah. Yeah.
I love pictures when they were sitting up there, they're so pretty.
They really were.
Oh, they were just gorgeous, you had 2 of those.
The minister.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
No
You are
mercy.
streaming.
I love that. I think that is really
Match
nice. I
the
love that.
minister's
She's gonna do a
message.
great
Oh.
job.
Yes.
Yes. So did you see my vacation?
See, I didn't even notice it.
Yeah.
Here?
Yes, I thought that was good.
It was so fun. It was just sitting there. You know what? You should read it.
I wanna see it. I missed
And they
the
stand the
section.
test of time. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, something about the
And
same
one
story.
for
Yeah.
and then there's Gail, and the next with Betsy, Casey, and
That's
Ted.
Friday.
And
So
it's
it's sort of like,
it's all about
I'm
friendship.
taking my daughter to
That's the sweetest thing.
for endoscopy.
They could
I
have it.
did not.
And I asked her.
Well, we hadn't heard, a friend
I've
there,
heard
she had her when she
of
was
her,
5, and it
her, you
became
know,
really a part of the fabric of our lives. And I just on vacation, I reread When She Gets
She's
Married.
gonna fall.
And they stand the test of time. I mean, it's like friendship.
I was reading that.
Well, then, and then
And I
so
thought
we
it
went
was
to
Monday,
Betsy's house because Betsy is a fictional character based on the author. So you can tour Betsy's house. I'm like, I got Terry, when I walked up to Betsy's house. In fact, that's one of the pictures of
Beyond the
Betsy's
gate.
house.
I saw the house in there.
Yeah.
It's pretty like the end of the.
Stacy's house.
Yeah.
It is, it's their friendship, and then like,
But I thought it was.
and they're not all sappy, and they're not so.
I know now.
Yeah, they're so good, and those are strong women, strong girls. Yeah, from Star, I'm gonna share this.
I've already signed up.
Yeah,
So
those
this
are
is
all, yeah.
Yeah.
So they're strong.
Takes that home.
My mother inquired, well, is out there Sunday, and they have these, qualities, students' qualities, and they would pick a student who exhibited.
But anyway, you just call it
Yeah,
that.
forceful. When she was 19, she got divorced, and I'll see you later. Isn't that hilarious? And they're like, yeah, they got that right.
Very nice.
You want something?
Yeah. And there really weren't many. There's about 2 women.
Always bringing food.
Yeah.
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 Food with it.
You're both, you're both taking away on the table. That's your birthday. I'm just trying to. I'm trying. I'm trying, I think I'm gonna get it okay. I wanna make sure I have all the way up to the roads. I'm trying to get up there. I'm thinking this for, I don't know, maybe it's very heavy, but
Shoulder
I
check.
want you to have to live with it. It's just too heavy. Let me just keep pulling.
Okay.
Jim is happy to pull.
Thank you. I'm just trying to orchestrate this. I'm
All right,
trying
I'll let you orchestrate.
to. Okay, thank you.
Any of the negative, the really
bad reactions. And I go to MD Anderson on the 25th, and hopefully I can get into a clinical trial. I just have an aggressive form, but my numbers are going down, so I'm getting better.
And look, you're just so beautiful.
I know, I
Yeah.
just want to squish you.
I feel fine,
You
I
look
really
good.
do, I feel fine,
So
so.
we'll include you in our prayers.
Oh, thanks, Grace. I'm accepting any and all.
Absolutely,
prayers.
that
I like
works.
so much. Yeah.
Okay,
They
thank you.
just say I
Beautiful
meant
flowers, and getting to
just in
see them
your
again
nose,
today
but-
was so lovely. And I heard you're going to the cemetery and take some.
I am, could I give you a couple to take
No,
with you?
no, you take
Oh.
us to the cemetery.
I need to ask you,
Stay
for our
When
little,
they,
do you want any initials after you, like Nash or whatever, doctor, just?
yeah, I have a master's, but no, I never read.
This is for the,
Yeah,
it's
so
been
lovely.
love you.
Thank you so much.
Thomas.
Yeah, you are.
Love you, you did great as always, as always.
Pancreas, everything on my, but it did get out and get right to the side, it didn't actually affect the nerve, that spinal nerve. But, what are the little glandules sort of that are on the side that sort of started wearing down some of those? And so that was what sort of caused that. And it's my upper, it's that C spine as opposed to the lumbar.
Yes.
So, yeah, so it's, which they say is your arm, and it affected my arm. And so that's.
Still?
No, well, chemotherapy has been shrinking the tumors, and so I feel better, but there's some weakness there. But I haven't,
But it's not affecting you.
no, not really, I get tired, but I don't
Of
have any
course.
energy levels that normally I would have. But other than that, yeah, I really haven't had.
You handled the chemo pretty well, haven't you?
Yes,
Good for
yes.
you.
But it helps, I think, to go into chemotherapy being pretty healthy.
The better you can be going in, I
The
agree.
healthier you are. I don't
Exactly.
know if you've had chemotherapy before, but I think
I think
Do
there's
you want to take these with you?
Oh, thank you, thank you.
Now, you're going to MD Anderson.
On the 25th in Houston, and there's a clinical trial, Van Morris. I keep wanting to say Van Morris' son. Yes, Van Morris. Dr. Van Morris is doing a clinical trial with the type of mutation that my cancer has. And evidently in breast cancer, it's called a BRAF mutation. But in colon cancer, it's BRAF mutation. And he is doing a clinical trial with this wraparound mutation, which
Oh, we'll be
Sort of.
happy to have you.
I hope so. I hope so. I hope. We'll see.
They are
We'll
so
see.
good. Anything they're doing there, you know, is good.
Yeah. Well, of course, I heard a rumor that Kate Middleton was there, and of course, they won't deny it or acknowledge it.
I wouldn't be surprised.
It
I
wouldn't
mean,
surprise
no,
me.
it wouldn't surprise me
It
in the
wouldn't
least that that's
surprise
where
me
she's
either.
been. Yeah, at least for a second opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. And that what hurts was, I guess, people keep thinking uterine or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah,
Nothing
definite.
Yeah. We
I
don't
know
know.
yesterday I saw something that I thought was going to be specific.
No, they're not.
Her speaking,
Yeah, no.
Yeah,
there's something
yeah.
defining.
But it's,
Well, you've got her courage, I'll tell you that. You're
Well-
royalty.
Oh, well, who knows? But yeah, life's a journey and
It is.
none of us
None of us know anything.
forever
Yeah,
and
one day at a
ever.
time.
And so,
Oh, I know, you
and
feel great.
so, well, I feel good.
Good.
I feel
Well,
good.
we'll pray that works and that
I
you
hope
get
it
accepted.
does. I I hope it does.
Jan.
Well, I just started marshland, so.
Okay, well, it's a fast read.
I'll take
Yeah,
it,
marshland
I'll
is
take it
okay.
with me.
Yeah.
Did you like it?
Oh, yeah.
It was a good book.
He likes any history.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was.
Well, I read 6 out of 9
Oh, my
for
God.
this year, but
Oh, my God.
I don't know about the others. I'm just-
I want
Yeah.
Did you read,
Next month.
I just finished.
Yeah.
Ann Smith
Jane.
was sitting
And
there.
Ann Smith too.
It was from their
Respective other
of the
sisters.
Black Slate, Jim and.
No,
Mary
yeah, they are.
Ann.
Jane
and
and
Really?
sisters.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
that one
Oh, yeah.
was so
Really?
interesting.
Yeah.
And it makes me just go back.
There
to
you
how
go.
long have I known?
Yeah,
Good.
well, you wouldn't know by looking at them.
No,
No, no, they're sisters.
But I thought that was
Yeah,
so
yeah.
interesting.
So they're gonna do it next month,
So,
so
yeah,
we're good. And we
I'll
got
leave
it
it
dates
here.
for
I'm
December.
glad we had
Yeah, I'll put
something
it
on
down. I just want you to see.
Actually,
for the books that we were reading.
You're
We could
lucky.
get up and
Yeah.
talk about
Yeah,
the
we're
books.
so lucky
Yeah,
to.
well, it's still by,
Yeah.
it's still December.
And I'll put Joan.
We'll need January, but we got, we're in good shape. I'll go stick this in the book. box.
Several months ago, and it's really for home, but I find this, I go faster. I've gotten so bent over for balance, and with this, I can walk faster and you always have a seat with you. Well, you know, I never used the seat. I use it for, like I was passing some water out. I owe people, this is for Sheila for her birthday. It's really, yeah. Have you got enough for the
Just so I can
cemetery?
go faster. Are you all set? You sure?
No, I'll take care of that. No, don't do that. I'll take care of it.
I don't know, it just seems so exercise.
I made such a mess. I made such a
Well, I
mess.
don't know how you do flowers without.
You-
I mean,
Yeah,
that's just
well.
what happened.
Exactly.
You know what, they'll clean it up.
Yeah, they
Don't
will.
clean
Yeah,
up,
well,
they'll be in here presently, I
All it's
promise you.
gonna take
Yeah,
is.
They already know I was gonna make a
Yeah,
mess.
they know that.
Yeah, they know I was gonna make a
That's
mess.
the biggest
They know,
mistake.
they're fully aware I was gonna make a
It's not
mess.
even wet. They'll-
No,
I'm
they'll
glad
do
it was part of the beneficiary.
Yeah.
Just
Thank
seems
you,
to me
God bless you.
That they could reduce the number of plates and stuff like that they run.
I know.
They were way too many.
Listen, they're given a number,
I know they are,
and,
but, you know, I mean,
I know,
This is
a lot
for
of people don't
Sheila
take
Edge
the
of Rose.
yeah.
Let's see.
And then I'm gonna take to the cemetery. This is yours, dear.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Did you get,
It's beautiful.
yeah, there's your hydrangea.
Oh, great. Oh, that's beautiful. Oh, isn't that gorgeous?
Isn't that pretty?
Yeah.
Gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous. Do you want any of these filler flowers? I've got a bunch of these.
Take that
Put
out.
that in the back.
No, this is fine.
Are you sure?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah, beautiful.
They are just gorgeous.
I'm gonna get my stuff together now.
Thank you. This was a lovely, 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 absolutely amazing, as always. Amazing as always.
Well, it was a good book.
And, oh, it absolutely.
Yeah,
That's why I took a picture of that one
Yeah.
Aeschylus.
yeah.
Okay. Now, they know I'm making a mess in here. They're well aware of it.
Yeah.
They know I'm making a mess. Ellen, do you want some of these cupcakes? Yes. I don't want 6 of them, but I'll take, do you have, can I, in this?
Yeah.
Can I have 2 of those? That'd be lovely.
Thank you, John. You're the most
And you already got your flowers, I fixed you up, so you got
Thank
yours.
you.
Just a little something. I'll take 2. Thank you, dear.
Trying to not get my fingers off.
That's okay, just right
Oh,
there.
there
Yep,
they
there's 1, and then 1 more. And that'll be perfect, that'll take care of me.
Right.
Thank you, Jane. Okay. Jen, do y'all want some of these? There's just a few of these little cupcakes.
Why don't you take the 4? I took 2, you take 4.
You don't need 4, Jane, don't you want some? I haven't had one, I'll take one for each of us, I haven't eaten anything, but don't you want some?
Don't you want to take the 4?
Have you got any?
They're
I
the
took
most
mine too.
unusual. The
They are.
icing is almost
It is.
dessert.
It is.
Yeah, I see,
It
it's almost
is.
as
It's
if, all
delicious.
right, huh?
This is perfect.
You know what I forgot to do? Take a picture of the visitor names.
Yeah.
That's all right, I'll get them, don't worry.
Yep, I closed it up.
That's okay, don't worry, I'll get them, don't worry, I've got enough to worry with.
Well, we got time, don't have to even do it today.
No.
Okay, and these,
Can I carry anything for you?
I have to go deliver those, where's my purse over there? And then go apologize to the cleaning people, I've gotta go deliver those. So I think what I'll do is just leave these, Grace, and I'll come right back.
Okay. I've got to go buy, I've got some more money here I've gotta go buy with, so I'm gonna go ahead and get that taken care of.
Okay, I'm gonna go see. All right, you've got your flowers, where are they? You're with your
Yes.
Walker? Okay, I've gotta go apologize for this mess.
And it's not a bad, it looks, but it's not a bad cleanup. It isn't like,
Thank you.
it isn't like wet.
I'll
No,
be
you
back.
didn't throw stuff all over the place.
Exactly,
Yeah.
I tried, tried to do my best. I gave way on my sleeve, so, but I'm taking one of these. The road had gone, I can get mine. No, I used to tie, I used to wrap.
Sylvia, come back.
Go ahead.
be right there.
I made a mess.
No worries, no worries.
I'm so sorry.
No, you're good.
I made a terrible mess.
No, you're fine.
Oh, I tried not to be messy, but I was.
Well, you know, they're so nice. It's better to pull them out than them having to dry out, you know?
Well, I tried not to be messy, but I did the best I could.
Oh, no, you're fine.
And I got these, I think I can carry these okay, Stephen.
Okay, so you'll be okay on your way
I
out?
don't think, nope, I gave them all away.
Okay, awesome.
Gave them all away. Okay. I'm sorry I made such a mess. That's okay. Okay, I think I got everything now.
Alrighty.
Okay, I made a mess. I'm sorry,
Okay,
dear.
Okay, yeah, no worries.
I love you. Mwah. I tried not to be messy, but that's messy.
I know.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am, we'll see you. God bless.
I'm going to the cemetery. Bye-bye.
I know. I guess all this, you're here till what, 3:30?
I leave in 5 minutes.
Oh, yeah, so I'm just gonna have to tell Johnny to put it up. Jamie wanted on Heather to do, but I don't have no idea if she's gonna do it.
She's doing the, is it
Silverware.
silverware, yeah. What does she want her to do, just put it,
I can put the
everything
silver
has to
up
put away, right?
and be clean and all that stuff. But I can just like guide him through the whole thing.
I can put, like, this can just be put away, I'll put this away. I'm guessing these were
And
you?
Alex, I was gonna ask Alex, but she leaves at 3
She lives
o'clock.
at 3 right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, let me see if it's unlocked, but they still need to get the key.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna have to call her.
Let me put away this stuff at least. Bye, Arturo.